I don't necessarily look at this as the state forcing us to put in these units. I see us, having this opportunity to reflect on what is needed, and what is needed is affordable housing. And so, what's being asked of us tonight, doesn't paint us into a corner, but I think that where you're coming from, right, that we need a little bit more time. And from what John was saying, it sounds like we have a little bit of flexibility with it. If we turn it in a little late, that wouldn't be so detrimental in that it would cause, I think, the 4-year delay. But that we should move quickly with it. It is an important issue. I mean, it's a major issue, not just in our city, but throughout the county, throughout the state. And if we're going to uphold our housing element goals, then we should be serious about it. And back in 2011, we adopted that housing element, but we didn't really do anything. I mean, we shouldn't just have these words just be nice words on a piece of paper. They should be things that we should want to implement. So I hope that becomes the motivator for us to act, rather than just complain about the state.
So I have lots of concerns about this document, and yes, our objectives are beautiful, but this document will not make those things happen.
Right.
That needs to come from a will within the council, a will within the residents, and a public partnership and a private partnership with somebody who's willing to build it. And that's just not going to happen with this document. And it is a document that we're sending to the state saying this is what is going to achieve these goals. And it's not necessarily going to achieve the goals that we want for Brisbane. It's more of a panacea to the state to tell them that we're working on it. So I think we really need to go through these as a council and see what we feel is really the best. One of the concerns I have is about mixed use, that we have a current downtown that has vacant commercial buildings. We have a Brisbane Village shopping center that has vacant buildings. And if we build new mixed use properties, and let's say the theory is that the people who live upstairs do their dry cleaning and their, have their laundry facilities and their daycare and their restaurants down below and shopping opportunities, wouldn't we rather have that be housing and let them walk to our current underutilized commercial areas and use those and make the downtown vibrant? If we're going to have housing, why add that extra layer of potential failure to our current commercial district without taking that into reason? Is it just so it gets built so somebody has a higher profit margin and so maybe they're going to build it? I don't think that's the right way to go about it. And that perhaps is a different economic development scenario. But it all ties into the housing. And we could have the same amount of housing without mixed use, 2 stories instead of 3 stories. And maybe that's more where we need to be in line, to not have wind tunnels and make it a closed community that isn't a walking community, that isn't as vibrant because it's too many units stacked up. I think that we can still do the 20 units per acre to get the state requirement, and we don't have to go as tall. We get a larger open space around those 20 units per acre. So I think we really need to go through this document and take our time and look at it, because what we do send to the state, we're really pretty much saying, we think we got it. We want your approval. And I'm not sure we really have it, that we know this is what we really want. So I would like to see if we can get staff to schedule, whether it's a workshop or a visioning, whatever we need to do to really go through and look at this massive document that the Planning Commission and the staff have worked on for years, for decades, to get it to where we're at, and make sure we're really comfortable with it, because we're going to live with it for another 8 to 10 to 20 years, because, again, we're going to want a document we can just build on. And my other concern is the extra almost 100 units that we're planning for to get the low mod. And I I think we need to see how we could do that differently. Because once we adopt this and do the zoning changes, Cliff's right, it's by right, the density. So I don't think we should be adding more density than we have to, whereas we could have a better plan to make them smaller, more affordable units, or make them able to be built through a public-private entity that doesn't need to have the same profit margin. So that's what I'd like to do, is to schedule something so we can talk about it more and come back while we're still in our timeline and try to get a little bit nailed down on some of these issues.
What kind of time frame are we looking at, John? Just, I mean, like, give us, like, okay, so what's the date that the state says they want it, and what is probably an okay, buffer to submit?
Well, again, the worst case is 60 days for the state review. So,
It's January, right, that they want it?
January 31st is the adoption deadline.
Okay.
So, if you start not getting their comments, the 60-day window closing in January, you shorten the back end in terms of the amount of time everybody has. But, if you rather have more time up, it sounds like you're privileging time up front versus time at the back end. So, I would want to be able to submit it to the state by mid-November at the very latest.
In November.
Mid-November.
Well, December 1st would be supposedly the last day to get it in 60 days before, and then we'd have no time to approve it.
Okay.
If they hold to the date. Again, in the past, they've.
All right, and then I just want to understand your that main concern that you brought. The first concern was that in this proposal before us, the properties that are across the street are designated as mixed use, and if they were just residential only, that would be more acceptable. Is that?
It would be better. I would think it would be better economically, and aesthetically, and for livability, if it wasn't mixed use. But that's my personal feeling, and what I see as a underutilized commercial district, that if it had those, let's say, 150 units or 100 units, those are people that would be, instead of shopping at the new places we're creating, we'd be having to utilize the places we already have.
Okay, so then, John, if we did that, that's not going to affect what we need to do as far as what HCD is requesting.
That's correct.
Okay, so, but you like you said, that's your opinion, and I take a different approach. I think the mixed use would be good because it provides an opportunity to access Bayshore, which right now we're completely cut off from Bayshore. So, granted, like you said, I think we need to be able to have that dialogue with the community. What I mean by being cut off by Bayshore is that people have to come into our town to use the village. since those properties, since one of the, that's right, one of those properties, that's right, we're not talking about that one.
None of them are
You're right.
adjacent.
I was thinking of 125 Valley, so, okay. No, okay, well, you know what, then, that is something to think about. Okay. I'm more, for me, 125 seems like the mixed use property. Because
that could be a better fit for mixed use.
Okay. So, you know, I think you bring up a good point. So, in regards to that.
So does staff think, and I'm sorry, did Lori or Ray have a response to my tirade? Or should we ask staff if they think that there's a feasible way to get some sort of another meeting or a workshop to...
Yeah. Well, I think maybe going with the model we have for the economic development workshop might work if we could do that on a tight time frame. I'd be curious to know, though, since there were 8 sessions before the Planning Commission. You know, we weren't there for that. You know, we could, of course, go back and watch it. But I'm wondering what kind of public participation happened at that level. And if it wasn't a lot, then would it be beneficial to open it up again to a workshop format and use social media like we have done with economic development? And I've seen, you know, there's a lot of great information on user voice that's been submitted already for the economic development topics. That might be a better way to get public input that could help better inform us on what the community wants. So does staff have any recollection or on what happened at those 8 Planning Commission meetings in terms of public input?
There wasn't a great amount of public involvement. There were, I can think of a handful of residents and property owners who attended and participated.
Can I make one comment? Before I was on the council, I participated in the last housing element, and the several meetings that I attended, it was usually Michelle and I, and usually maybe one other person that attended in all of them. And it was actually one of the reasons I was driving home, venting to Michelle saying, who do they think is going to watch out if they're all at home in bed? And it was one of the things that was really a turnkey moment for me, that there was no public participation, and the council was making really big rule changes, and things that would affect our community. And so looking at the minutes of the meetings, they were all very sparsely attended.
Yeah, I did review those and saw that as well. So I would agree with your proposal to have some sort of workshop as quickly as possible.
Just a quick, I watched the last meeting, and there were representatives there from the company that owns most of the property along Park Lane, and they were not too keen on what was being proposed. They were concerned about some of the same things you were raising. And so, I mean, when people have their interests directly involved, that's when they come. And the same thing with when they changed the zoning for, on San Bruno Avenue. Boy, when people found out about it, you really got a response, kind of thing. It's when people see, hey, they're doing something that affects me or my property, then you get a response. You don't really get a whole lot of general kind of participation in things like this, except for a very few activists. So I really think that the process, it should be an open process, absolutely, and there are always going to be people who can contribute a lot. I know there was a number of submissions from Dana Dilworth, for instance, during the whole process, and some very interesting comments. I think, the property owners affected, certainly, they're going to say something, and they should. But I think the real dynamic here has to be with the council who's representing the community. I mean, we're elected to represent what we believe to be in the interest of the community. And it's really our job to feel that we're fulfilling that responsibility as best we can. And so that's why I think if we have more time and if we can get a conversation that's better structured. You know, I know that maybe if we have a little more time, all of us can sort of sit down and say, okay, so what are some options? What are some alternatives? What are things that look better or worse? And then just, you know, structure a conversation. I think we need to have some kind of structure to it, or otherwise we might do a lot of spinning around. So we have to sort of figure out and I think we need staff to help us on that. You know, what's a more efficient way to do this? But for myself, I just need to feel comfortable that, okay, this is a set of policies that I feel I want to vote for on behalf of the community, and I'm not there yet.
Yeah. No, I don't know. John, I just want to ask a quick question. You know, like, you know, in talking about mixed use, we always think of mixed use being housing with some kind of retail or a shop, or, you know, but mixed use can also be a civic use as well. So, you know, and I think that's something that we should be also considering too, so that if you know, if we allow the rezoning to occur, and there was, you know, because of a greater use or greater value, I should say, of the property from what it currently is zoned at, you know, you could do some kind of community give, you know, on the first level. I'm just saying, you know, we need to keep all options open.
Of course.
You know, or, you know, or it's a standalone residential unit and giving land that could be used for public space. That maybe we have our standalone type of public building, or it's just a park. You know, I mean,
Well,
there are definitely options, you know, that are out there that we need to explore.
I agree that there's options, and you do have to keep in mind that if you take something that could be revenue generating for the property builder, the developer, and make it into a public use or open space, there's a cost that goes along with those units. And then that cost brings the price up, so it makes them less affordable. So we do have to look at that affordability balance versus public use. Yes, we could put an ice skating rink at the bottom and have a city park and rec. But who's going to pay for that, and does that increase the prices of every unit to become unaffordable? So I think that those are all things that the Planning Commission has looked at, and staff's looked at to a certain degree on what makes something affordable, and the state's looked at it. But I think that we all need to sort of get our heads around what we really are implying that we want to see out there.
Yeah. Now, we do know that we have a very short window, so
Yes.
we're not going to be able to dig so deep into the weeds. But we should, I think, you know, if we're efficient, we should be able to get a pretty good understanding of what potentially we'd like to see, and then, of course, later on, dig down deeper and refine. And I don't think just by submitting this that we're obligated to do it. There is flexibility, as long as we make sure that the amount of units is maintained.
And, well, the amount of affordable units is maintained. But what we're going to need, however we do this, is somebody who has that fabulous calculator that can say, well, if you change this footprint or this density, it's going to change these numbers these ways. Because especially if we're trying to look at it in a very quick, visioning or workshop where we have to get a result fairly quickly, and we say, well, we like Plan A better than Plan B, we have to be able to know if that Plan A is going to run out the numbers for the city, for the state numbers. So I think that's something that we would want to make sure that staff has the numbers and the program that's going to be able to plunk these things in with some assuredness that we're not talking about things that aren't able to be done.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
So, does staff have any ideas about a date for this?
Or you just want to
Or do you want to wing
think
it?
it all over and come back.
Well, I mean, the dates are the dates, right? I mean,
Right.
you don't have Thursdays. You basically have Mondays and Tuesdays. Or you don't have Thursdays and Wednesdays. You have Mondays and Tuesdays. So whenever you want to do it.
Well, I didn't bring my day planner today, but I can do most Mondays and Tuesdays. During the winter.
Better for me, just because I'm taking that Civics 101 course, which is on Tuesdays. So maybe the next Monday after the workshop on the 3rd.
Without looking at my calendar, I say that works. We probably want to see what Clark.
Do we have a subcommittee that kind of relates to this set of issues? I'm trying to think of structuring the conversation so it's efficient, and it's always good to have a subcommittee sit down with the staff and figure out, okay, so what's a good way to organize this?
Have a housing subcommittee.
Well, there's also there's a planning liaison,
Yeah.
Okay, so,
and it might be nice to have a member of the planning commission that would want to come and sort of give a quick. We looked at this, and this is why we did this. I mean, in a condensed version, if we could arrange that to happen.
With the, whatever subcommittee of the council, is that what you're talking about, or what that?
I think as the just to give a overview.
I'm just trying to figure out whether you want a planning commissioner to come in and work with the council subcommittee in terms of preparation for the day, or whether you're talking about having them come in and participate in the workshop with folks,
Either one. What would the
or both.
yeah, or both, yeah, right.
both might?
Is there time for both? I mean, you're saying November 10th, but
Well, if the
seems
subcommittee.
late considering we have
or
it
if
in
a
mid-November to
subcommittee.
submit this.
So do we, so which subcommittee would we have to decide?
You have to decide.
Yeah, that's why I said we. We meaning the council. So we have, I guess we have two relevant subcommittees. One is the housing, I don't even know who's on that, and the other
You
is
and
the
I are on
planning
it.
commission liaison.
That's,
Planning is Terry and Lori.
yes.
So it's
Housing
And Ray,
is Cliff and Ray.
Oh, really?
it is.
So who wants to do it?
Yeah, I think it would also be helpful.
either
I-
either way.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, I think it should be a meeting where the full council is
Well, that's what the
there.
workshop's gonna be. We're talking,
Right.
preparing for that.
talking to ask. I would like to ask a representative from the planning commission, and it might be the chair, to I think come and give a short presentation on their process of, I want to say process of elimination of how they came to their conclusion.
Okay, why can't we just do that at the workshop with the full council? What's the benefit of having a subset of us hear that information twice?
Well,
Or
we could do
hear
it that way too.
No, no. Yeah, well, that, of course, what Terry's talking about is a different function. What I was talking about was organizing the agenda for the meeting. That's what I was talking about.
Okay,
And that's what I thought the subcommittee could really, get into. Okay, what are the issues? What are the options? Really set it up so that we don't go around spinning wheels, that we have it really structured.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought a subcommittee could do.
Okay.
And, also at the subcommittee level, we could bring in some folks, right? We could bring in someone from Mid-Penn who could, give us some insight to affordable housing, as far as development goes, and some of the other players, just to also, to work with staff to identify, I think some of the things that that we'd like to achieve, but maybe don't know how to achieve, you know, I mean, because, you know, that's something that you brought up, Terry.
Well, I think that's
you know,
more,
being realistic.
I think that's more visioning that's going to go on once this document is sort of in place. But
You know, to me, it helped for me. You know, if I have some folks who are coming in from the outside, providing, you know, information about a particular subject that they're experts in, it helps in my decision making. And I think, you know, not that I mean, we could invite them to that workshop if the subcommittee felt that was helpful, the staff felt that was helpful. But you know, that's why I would do a subcommittee, is to look not only at what the you know, outside the dais, you know, what some of the options that the planning commission was looking at, but also just bringing in some outside assistance in regards to housing and affordable housing. Because, you know, when you look in this document, I mean, there's a lot of input that was given by HL,
which I couldn't read all.
You know,
of.
HIP housing. So there's a lot of you know, great information that could be brought in.
So why not, if I don't know, if Terry and Laurie are willing to do it.
Sure.
Does sound like you had a lot of thoughts that you'd be able to
So
set up options.
if we're planning a meeting here with the council on the 10th,
Right.
I mean, that's pretty quick to bring in.
Yeah, well personally, I think what we really need is to get our internal act together. And that means utilizing the knowledge of the staff and if appropriate, you know, planning commission, to get a sense of, okay, so what was the decision tree? You know, why did you decide this way rather than that way? What are the arguments for and against? So we can get a real understanding of the process of getting to where we're at, and then whether we like those outcomes or not, that's what we discuss on the 10th. So it would seem to me that, you know, what the subcommittee needs to do is to really sit down with the staff and go through all of those decision-making processes, the paths that were followed, the options that were chosen in reference to the ones that were discarded for which reasons, that kind of thing. I mean, Terry, you have already been raising a number of things that basically you look at, okay, why not do this rather than that kind of thing? You've already been thinking that way. And to me, this is what we need to look at in terms of all the major decision-making points in the document. That's kind of how I see it anyway.
Well, you know, kind of like what you suggested, Ray. I mean, an individual council member could just have a time with staff, and if you personally feel that you're uncomfortable with, you know, knowing all the data, you could get more data, you know, to get greater understanding, and it doesn't have to be a subcommittee.
Well, I was thinking of, you know, that what the subcommittee would be able to do is to structure the conversation. That's what I'm thinking. You know, I'm going to be asking my own questions and looking at things and so forth, and I will do that anyway, you know me.
Well, it sounds like you're halfway there to doing it, so maybe it should be you two on the subcommittee.
I don't know. It's.
I'm just trying to think how, you know, if it's one or two on our own, we're all going to come up with different
Of course, yeah.
ideas.
Right.
And so, which is why I thought that having a member of the, you know, we're all going to need to get more involved in this document, and having the availability of the planning commission to, you know, give us their information and reasonings was an important thing. And then as far as structuring the workshop, I think it's really going to be something that we're going to sit there and be able to have to drill down and find out what other possibilities are there and what we can live with and what we feel very passionately about. And that's going to come down to the council making that decision.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, one, do you think the subcommittee is a good idea or not? Which I think it is, because it's always been helpful. And two, then, which two of us makes the most sense to ask to take on that responsibility? And that's really what we're looking at here. And I don't know.
Madam
You know,
Mayor,
just thinking about like logistics, because you work.
Yes,
So,
I work.
So then, that it would be a nighttime thing. Not that staff could.
can I just give you another option besides
Sure.
the two subcommittees that you have? I just talked to the city attorney. This would be an ad hoc committee of the council. In other words, it's just for this purpose, and then that's the only purpose. So you can choose any two of you that you want.
Oh, that's getting dangerous.
All right.
I don't know if that helps or hurts.
What's the council's pleasure?
You want
I guess the question becomes, who really wants to do this, I guess is what it amounts to. And if all four of us do, then we have,
Then we no longer have a subcommittee.
yeah, right, right. But do we want a subcommittee to do it? If we do, then who is most interested in doing it, I guess, and has the time to do it? I guess those two things.
Well, I feel very passionately about it, and if
That's
someone,
kind of what I picked up.
if somebody wants
Yeah.
me to, I will take it on, and I will make time to make it happen. I'm not as flexible as some others, as far as timing, but I will, work with staff and work with the planning commission, and try to arrange something to outline some of the options. But again, if I'm on the committee, it's going to be some of my passionate ideas. And so if you were looking for balance, or the other person's ideas.
You're looking at me. I can do it. It's fine. Yeah, but I would want to make sure that, if it's you and me, that we make sure that we're not just directing it in a way that it looks at issues that we're interested in. I want to make sure that all the council members' issues get addressed.
Oh,
And
of course, and
you could always email staff and say,
I would
here's
hope
what I would
that-
like to see.
that
discussed.
your concerns, that all our council members' concerns, are funneled through staff, so that I have an idea. Well, it's not a good one or it's a great one. I mean, or my vision for this or my concern, and so that we look at those and address them, so that we can at least talk a little more intelligently about what's feasible and what's possible when we come back as a group.
Right. That's it.
Okay.
So
So
we need to get to, is it
I'm comfortable with you and Laurie.
Lori and I?
Sure.
Are you
Cliff, are you
Yeah,
comfortable?
comfortable that that's a balanced?
I think it's a good balance.
And what sort of outside people would you want to bring in? I mean, Cliff had
But
mentioned
that you can
affordable
talk about.
housing.
We can
Okay.
You can
discuss
decide that, yeah, right.
Okay.
I'll call you.
We'll leave it up to you all,
And we'll tentatively set up the workshop for November 10th.
right. Ta-da.
Yeah, cool.
So I think I need to extend the meeting,
Nice to have a little break,
or,
too.
yes, and that's,
Just vote on the styrofoam ban so I can go home.
oh, well then, I'll make a motion to extend the meeting for 15 minutes.
Second.
Sure.
And do we want to go ahead and consider the disposable, what are we calling it now?
That's why we changed it.
The prohibition on the use of polystyrene-based disposable food serviceware by food vendors? Do we want to go ahead and discuss, take that up now, or do we want to take a break first?
Well, you did mention you wanted to take a break, right?
I'm happy with a 5-minute break. I mean,
Yeah, okay, let's take a break. All right.
We've been sitting.
we have more than just a styrofoam ban. We have staff report,
You know, and hey,
the other meeting.
No, I know, I got the request from the audience.
That's just the manner in which